Hello apes and welcome to the sixth video on Chapter 1, Science and Sustainability. And as you remember where we left off, we were talking about that life has become more pleasant, and we can even consider during the time of the Great Depression how many people lived in poverty. They did not have access to medicine, and even before all of this, clothing, food, jobs, and now because of advances in technology and the Industrial Revolution, life has become more pleasant. But it also has caused our consumption to rise as well, and our demands on the environment. Of the 20 wealthiest nations, they have 55 times the income of the 20 poorest nations. So that's huge to consider, because this is a gap that has been created, and the way that the wealthiest countries consume the natural resources are far different than the way the poorest nations do. It says at the bottom this is a three times the gap that existed 40 years ago. So it's a big difference that we're seeing. Not everyone is going to benefit from rising in affluence equally, and we'll talk about affluence. And I hope that it just got a little bit windy out, and I hope this wind isn't interfering with the sound. But what we see is that the ecological footprints of the countries are going to vary greatly, and the United States footprint, what we're finding out, is much greater than the world's average. We're bad. The Americans consume more natural resources than any of the nations. We are considered the richest 1%. And we have 25% of all the income. So here's ecological footprints from around the world, and you can tell relative by size. Canada and the United States are close. France comes in next. Israel is the next. And then take a look at Rwanda, which is a African country, and how tiny their ecological footprint is. Or even Haiti is even smaller. I know some of you are planning to go to Haiti, but their footprint is smaller because they just don't have the technology to use up the resources like the other countries that you see depicted here. So what does population and consumption do? Okay, it drives erosion. It has impacts on agriculture. It causes deforestation. We cut down our trees at alarming rates. It's a buildup of toxic substances. Forests help to recycle those toxic substances. There's a lot that they offer, and if you're cutting down the trees, then toxic substances can build up. Let alone we're putting it in by the use of fossil fuels and industry and driving our cars. There's a large freshwater depletion and consumption. We're noticing that our fish in the ocean, the population numbers are going down, they're declining. They play a role in the food chain. They play a role in balancing that aquatic ecosystem, and when you remove them and deplete them, then that ecosystem becomes weak, the water becomes polluted. So we have air and water pollution. Waste generation. We are producing more waste. If something's broken, your cell phone, let's just toss it out and we'll get a new one. It's not recyclable. It is recyclable, but it's not recycled. We just typically throw them in the trash. Some people do donate them, but we do that. Think of the plastic containers that you get your milk in, or the jars that you get your different food in. They go in the trash. There's some communities that have recycling in those communities, but it still is waste generation. The way that I think you're going to be just amazed at what mineral extraction and mining and how that impacts the earth. We are now mining mountaintops where we're destroying mountaintops and we're just breaking them down for the coal, and then this is creating mudslides and runoff into towns and communities. We mentioned global climate change. And then we've got to consider those organisms that are going extinct, and that is the loss of biodiversity. Once a species is extinct, we know it's gone forever. We're never going to get that back. So let's take a look at human population, and you can see that in the purple areas that's more densely populated, and in the green areas that is low densely populated areas. So you can see the East Coast over here to the Midwest. We've got a lot of population here, and then population is thicker here. But when we look into this part, call it the Midwest, there's not as much in the population. So some of the things we'll be considering is agriculture. Where can you have agriculture? Urban sprawl, where the cities are moving out, and other land uses that have substantially affected most of the landscape of not only the United States but all the nations. So that population does continue to drive consumption, and one of the things that you're going to hear us talk about is something known as the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. And this is the most comprehensive scientific assessment of the condition of the world's ecological systems. In the year 205, 2,000 of the world's leading scientists from 100 nations got together to file a report on our consumption of our resources, and they came up with 4 main points that they all agreed on. And one is that all humans have drastically altered ecosystems, ecosystems that may not be able to be restored, that these changes have contributed to the human well-being and economic development, but at a cost. We may be gaining in money, but we're losing in land and our resources. So it's not a win-win situation. Environmental degradation, they anticipate, could get much worse because of the continual population increase. And that degradation in a lot of areas can be reversed, but it's going to take years. It's going to require a lot of work. And we're starting, but we're doing baby steps. And those baby steps need to be picked up to leaps and bounds. We've got to think about our energy choices because that is going to influence our future. It's going to impact our future. Right now, one of the things you'll be learning, and I think I might have the numbers a little bit off, but there's something like only 64 years left of our fossil fuel, our oil, in all the world, because we just don't have the technology to extract further into the Earth's core to be able to pull out the fossil fuels. And fossil fuels take thousands, hundreds of thousands of years to be produced. So not in our lifetime will we see it regenerated or restored. Coal, I believe, has maybe like I want to say like an 80-year amount of supply left for use. And again, we can't extract everything because it'll be destroying too much of the land. The natural gas, you've heard fracking. We're going to talk about hydrofracking this year as well. Natural gas has about a 112-year supply left. But again, these are all materials that took hundreds and thousands of years to produce. So we've got to deter that fossil fuel dependency, and we've got to find other sources that we can use. Initially, we're going to see that they're not going to be cost effective, but once everybody, starts using them, then they are going to be cost effective, and as technology develops, that will also help make it more cost effective. So everything that we rely on right now really depends on fossil fuels. The machines that we use, the way that chemicals are produced, our transportation, the consumer products that you buy in the store. Fossil fuels are a one-time bonanza, and supplies are certainly going to decline, as we already suggested. We've used up half of the world's oil supplies right now, and at our continuing consumption rate, there's going to be a fossil fuel shortage. So we need to look for sustainable solutions. We need to look for those renewable resources that we can use. We want to look at renewable energy and efficiency. Water, the power behind water is amazing. We can harness that for electricity. Wind, the power behind wind. We've already seen turbines being set up. That can generate electricity. So we have other ways. Solar energy. There's ways of harnessing and trapping the energy from the sunlight. Wind, water currents, solar, that's free. We don't have to do too much, and the impacts of using them are less than the impacts of our fossil fuels. Organic agriculture. We need to be able to use our land wisely. We are depleting our soil. Again, soil took hundreds of thousands of years to develop. We need to make sure that we are sustainably farming. Legislation. We've got to make sure that our politicians are backing the policies that need and promote sustainability. We need to create technology to reduce the pollution. We need to protect the species and their habitats. Just take a look as you're driving around this summer. How many new developments, how many new condominiums are going up in different areas? The loss is habitat. And we can't let companies like that just come in and destroy a place without having to follow some guidelines in replacing trees and habitat so that we continue to have the organisms that help keep our biogeochemical cycling going. We need to recycle and decrease our waste. We also need to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. Again, with our alternatives and our sustainable solutions, we could do that, but we have to have government policies in place in order for that to happen. So here's a good example. We talked about solar energy. We'll be seeing that there are, I believe it's Norway, there's towns in Norway that depend almost 100% on solar energy, that their houses have solar panels, and that the excess energy is then used and sold to industries and businesses that don't have solar. So we need to develop solutions like that. We'll talk about campus sustainability. Last year's Apes class had an idea that I will be introducing to you to do as a sustainable campus project, and that is to create a rain garden so that you're collecting the rainwater that's going to be used for a garden that will create a habitat and help to recycle some of the natural biogeochemical cycles and nutrients on our own campus. So that's one of the things that we'll talk about. We need to reduce our campus ecological footprint. Look at the water fountains that we have so that we don't have water bottles. So student organizations like this Apes class are often the key to initiating recycling programs and finding ways to reduce energy use and to advocate for new courses or majors. And that's how AP Environmental Science came up. Okay, we're going to end this here, and I will see you in the 7th screencast. Have a good one.